What's up, guys? It's Branden Flash. Today you're joining me at a brand new Charlotte, North Carolina Tesla Supercharger, and it's on the 6th floor of a parking garage, and there's a lot more here than meets the eye. So I'm going to give you guys a full site tour and show you how Tesla built this site. So as I mentioned, this is a brand new Tesla Supercharger. It actually just opened today, I believe, officially. You can see it doesn't even have one of the demand graphs that show, like, let's see, on another Supercharger here. So here's another Charlotte Supercharger. This is actually the original Charlotte Supercharger. It has this busy times graph to show you when it's busy. This one also doesn't have time of use billing yet. Typically, Tesla seems to set a fairly low price on new sites initially, and usually has only one price rather than having time of use price. Also interesting, looks like this site is reduced service, and they were actually working on it when I was there a little bit ago. So that makes total sense. A little interesting that they put it as reduced service because there's still 9 stalls available, which is quite a bit. But anyway, back to the Charlotte site. So this is the 1111 Metropolitan Avenue Supercharger, pretty close to uptown Charlotte. This is in the Midtown area. South End Charlotte here is where kind of a lot of younger professionals, things like that, are living. And then uptown is just, that's what the downtown in Charlotte is called. So if you're not from Charlotte, you wouldn't realize that the city proper area is uptown, not downtown. It was a rebranding campaign quite a few years ago. Anyway, so that's where we are. Just to give you some context, there's the whole Charlotte as a whole. Looks like the original Charlotte is actually completely full, which is interesting because normally the North Lake side is the one that's full. But anyway, let's get to this tour. And I think I'm going to take the elevator down, and I'm going to take you all the way down to the incoming service for this site, because that's where the power flow starts. And I think that makes the most sense to begin this tour. And as I said, this is a 16 stall version 3 supercharger. So there's 4 cabinets. Each stall can do 250 kilowatts, but each cabinet is only about 387 kilowatts. So we're going to go downstairs and take you down to the transformer. So you're now joining me at street level. We've got a nice little seating area there. We've got some shops, Arby's, Nails, Crumble Cookies, Cycle Bar. But you're here for electrical infrastructure. So we've got a 1500 kVA transformer. This is from Duke Energy. You can see on the meter here, right there. This is transformer metered, as you can see, because the transformer's on the meter rather than there being a metering cabinet in the switchgear. And then it's feeding this Lincoln Electric cabinet. This is a 2000 amp cabinet, as you can see here. So this is the service switchboard, 2000 amps, as I said. So this is coming from the transformer into this cabinet here. And then rather than having a bottom exit like most cabinets would have, it does have a bottom entrance. I'm assuming based on there not being anything from the transformer other than underground. We have 6 4-inch roughly conduits here. And that's running all the way up the building, as you can see. So it goes all the way up there. I'll join you up there in just a minute, but we'll stay down here for another moment. So a couple notes here. So the main disconnect is actually on the level upstairs where we just were. And then there's actually an emergency power off in the main electrical room for this complex. There's a Best Buy, a Trader Joe's, things like that. So most likely that's what these conduits are right there, just for controls. So that's what we have down here, 2000 amp cabinet with conduits coming out of it to serve the cabinet upstairs. I'll show you in just a moment. And then we have an emergency power off down here. And that appears to be going up to the 4th floor, roughly. So let's go back upstairs and we'll continue up there, and I'll show you kind of how the site's set up. And then I'll show you the conduits between the charging cabinets and the dispensers themselves, because that's where it starts to get pretty wild. So we just took the elevator upstairs up to level 6 of this parking garage. We're back at the superchargers. And let me show you where that conduit comes up. So we'll go over here. So if you look right there, that's the termination box, or kind of junction box. I don't know the proper term for that, but that's where those conduits going straight up the side of the building come up. The conduits then go all the way over here, all the way down here, and then let's go downstairs and I'll show you how they come all the way up here. before we go down there, I did want to show just this general setup up here. So here we have another one of the same 2000 amp cabinets, but this one's labeled distribution switchboard. So this has the main circuit breaker. And then you have 4 supercharger cabinets because, as I mentioned, this is a 16 stall supercharger site, which means there's 4 dispensers per cabinet. So you have 4 cabinets. So now we're going to go around and I'm going to show you the conduits underneath. Also worth noting, the supercharger cabinets are not in numerical order. So this is cabinet number 2. This one right next to it, cabinet number 1. Cabinet number 4. And cabinet number 3. But the supercharger stalls are in numerical order. So you have stalls number 1, so 1 A through D, you have 2 A through D, and then you have 3 A through D and 4 A through D. And it's worth noting, look at these wireways, these above ground wireways. So you have 4 there that's not connected there. Note that. But you have 4 here that are connected and going into the supercharger cabinet. And then over here, so you've got 3 over there that are not connected to these. And then you have this raceway here going behind the distribution cabinet, not into the distribution cabinet, but rather out of the supercharger cabinet. And then that's going all the way over here. So that's serving these 4 stalls. But the raceway is actually connected there, which is quite interesting. Just so you know where we're going. So there's the superchargers and we're going just under here. There's also the conduits, again, for context. So you've got 4 conduits there. We'll get to that in a minute. Got more conduits you can see there. So let's start here where we meet the 6 conduits from down below. And then we'll go through all these different conduit runs going on. So you have the 6 conduits. Got another box here. I don't really know why this is necessary. I guess just to pivot it over rather than having a bend, but whatever. I'm not an electrical engineer. I just know enough to be dangerous. So you've got 6 conduits here coming all the way over. And then atypical for most supercharger parking garage installations, it's actually going through the parking garage floor, as you can see there with the butyl around them. So that's going to the distribution cabinet. And then that's feeding the superchargers. So the superchargers are actually being fed via above ground wireways upstairs, on above ground, of course. And then, so coming over here, so remember the superchargers not being in order. Well, this is why. So you have 4 conduits there, and you have 4 conduits there, again, going through the parking garage floor, which is very atypical for superchargers. But the reason that those supercharger cabinets were out of order is that the outermost cabinet, so you have the 4 cabinets, so these 2 were actually serving the 4 stalls nearest to each of them. So the 4 stalls next to that one, the 4 stalls next to this one, and then those middle 2, those are these 2 right here. So the 4 conduits coming out. So this is serving, I believe they were stalls 4A through D. So you've got conduits over here. And then this is going to that above ground raceway to then be distributed to the different posts. And it's also interesting that rather than using butyl here, it looks like they're using more of a foam filler, or maybe it's just a different color. I don't really know. So that's those 4 conduits. And then we'll go back over here. This one's even more interesting because upstairs I showed you that they actually had 5 and 3. So we've got the 4 conduits right here. Just following along here. Goes into this box to make a hard 90. And then notice this 1 conduit splits off to that 5th stall that I showed you. So that's going into that row of 5. And then over here we have the 3, just walking around cars here. And then they had to put a low clearance for 7 feet for this parking stall. So not every vehicle could park there. And then this is going up into that above ground raceway, but you've only got 3 conduits because you only have 3 conduits here because you're serving those 3 stalls for, I believe that was 1A through C, whereas that's 1D right there. So let's go back upstairs and then I'll walk you through the cabinet setup. So we're back upstairs again, just want to show you. So there's the 4 of cabinet 4 on the 4 raceway, 4 position raceway, I guess, if you will. And then here we have the 4 stalls for cabinet 3, again going to this cabinet because this is the outer cabinet. And then you have the conduits between the cabinets because on version 3 superchargers you have a DC bus between cabinets. So let me show you that as well. So this cabinet is what Tesla calls Star Center. So this is the main cabinet that controls the DC bus. And then let me just show you the label here in case you're not familiar. I've definitely shown this before, but never hurts. So here we have the input rating. So 360 to 528 volts, 483 phase is what they're serving here. 465 amps, so that's 387 kVA, or close enough to 387 kilowatts. kVA and kilowatts are not directly related, but they're close enough when it comes to DC fast charging. And then here you have the information on the DC bus. So DC input output 575 kilowatts. So that's how much can be moved between the cabinets at 880 to 1000 volts. And the maximum input current is 640 amps. So 640 amps up to 575 kilowatts DC between the supercharger cabinets. Then over here you have the DC post. So that's the actual where you plug in your car. So 0 to 500 volts at up to 631 amps. As many of us have experienced, these superchargers just absolutely rip at up to 250 kilowatts, though many have actually been seeing lately a bit higher than 250 kilowatts. And these were built in October of 2022. My understanding is that this site's been partially built, kind of in flux, not yet energized for quite a while, but here we are now. It's open because you can see that date. And then there's the part number 387 kVA, 400 volts AC, and it's a 4 output. So in Europe, you'll actually see some 3 output version 3 supercharger cabinets. But that's a DC bus. So you've got the raceways between. So that's what that is. These are just to go between those cabinets. And then that's an AC distribution cabinet. So there's no DC in there. I'm not 100% sure what this line is. I suspect that's going to the site controller that's in there because there's actually a cellular modem in that distribution cabinet. So you can see that up there. And then to my knowledge, this raceway is actually the AC input to each cabinet, but I could be wrong. Not 100% sure, but that's just my logical conclusion here based on there being the DC there. But also there's the raceways here, so it's hard to say 100%. They might actually just have power running underneath the superchargers potentially through the raceway. If someone knows better, please comment down below. But there you have that. I suspect this is control lines going into the supercharger cabinet. So here you have, this is cabinet number 2. So you're serving these 4 stalls right here. Then you have the split 3 and 1, as I showed you down below. And then that's how we build this supercharger, essentially, or how Tesla built this supercharger. Lots of bollards, of course, to protect all the equipment, which makes total sense. Another pretty interesting part about why this site is special and kind of above average of difficulty level is that when you start drilling through things like structural concrete on a parking garage, you actually have to involve beyond just the typical electrical and civil scope and civil engineers and electrical engineers that are involved in a typical DC fast charging project. You actually have to pull in a structural engineer, and then you have to do like load calculations and just general structural engineering that is not typically necessary in a fast charging installation because you're not typically impacting the load ratings of things. You're just putting some conduits in the ground, putting some concrete pads for equipment and wiring it all up. So definitely significantly more complexity here at this project than most supercharger or other DC fast charging projects that Tesla or others would take on. And that's also partially why in most cases, they would try to run the conduits just above the parking deck or around the parking deck rather than through the parking deck. So I'm actually pretty surprised to see that they would do that. And I highly doubt they would do that in a place like California with earthquake ratings and things like that, because then it becomes even more complex. Well, anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this particular supercharger site or Tesla's version 3 supercharger architecture as a whole, please comment down below. I also do have a video doing a deep dive on Tesla's prefabricated supercharger system and how that can kind of speed up deployments, some benefits and some drawbacks of that system. I'll link that down below, so that way if you haven't seen that before. Anyway, if you like this, comment down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you on the next one.